Let's show all the rest of our skeleton for this. So Control Shift click. There we go. Okay, and we've got what, the levitator scapulae. That's got that little tiny piece that we have to deal with. So I'm going to duplicate the levitator scapulae. Alright, and now the muscle we're going to be working with at this point, the Splenius Capitis. Splenius Capitis. That's going to be the one that we focus on now. So let's write that down. Splenius Capitis. Alright, what are the insertions, the origins of this guy? So the origin is actually going to illustrate a mistake I made recently. It's going to be along the top 4 thoracic vertebrae, right along the spinous process of the top 4 thoracic vertebrae. So again, along the spinous process, so the tip, okay? And then it continues along what's called the nuchal ligament. So you'll have to forgive me, a little bit of a cold as I record these. The nuchal ligament is what they measure when trying to see if a child inside the womb could have Down syndrome, not autism, but Down syndrome or something else. So they'll measure the distance between the nuchal ligament, the distance the nuchal ligament has from the spine, and that'll tell them whether or not the child has may or may not have Down syndromes, and then they do more further testing from there. So now the origin is along the spinous process and a little bit of that nuchal ligament. Where's that insertion? Where's this thing going? So we're heading over to the mastoid process, basically. We're heading over to this side right here. So this entire muscle, the shape of it is going to be kind of just a simple linear transversal movement over there. Now, since it's coming from the nuchal ligament, sorry, and the nuchal ligament, let's just say it's going to come up from C7, right? And it's coming up and up and up and up and up and up a little bit. The nuchal ligament is really kind of important, actually, to keep in mind, because that's part of why when you feel into the back of your skull, you don't feel the cervical vertebrae. The nuchal ligament is actually stretching from C7 up to the superior nuchal line. So now, with that one done and said, when it comes around, it's our muscle is coming from 4 deep. It's coming up, and then now in this case it needs to roll around to become part of this. So you want to look for a little bit of a roll as it moves in. Okay, so now we can do this one relatively easily. You can do it with all the different insertions if you want to. We can also use curve, try, fill if you want to. I haven't decided which one's going to be the one we want, but let's get rid of these guys, and I'm going to invert so that we've got that little tiny piece, just a little bit of form there, and I'm only doing this so I keep all of these muscles as separate subtools, and there's value in that for me, so that's why I want to make sure they're separated. So curve trifill or curve tube, which one do we really want to work with? Curve surface. Have we tried curve surface? Do we know what that does? Can't do it when it's partially hidden, so let's come down here and just say to geometry, delete hidden. Okay, is it still hidden? Let's come in, delete the curve. Yep, it is still hidden, so delete hidden. I must not have pressed it with enough force. Okay, that looks crazy. What's going on with that? Does it have snap on? Seems to. So we're going to ignore it because it was a failure. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's do curved trifill. Lower my draw size there, right? Would have got nicer, cleaner edges if I'd have been more careful. But it's not bad. Having a large draw size like that has advantages. Okay, let's delete the curve. So stroke, delete curve, so it's just out of my hair. Into the snake hook brush. And now let's move this along the nuchal line. So there's C7. Moving along the nuchal line a couple of inches. Okay, turn transparency on. Move that nuchal line back a bit. In fact, we're not even on that nuchal line. So, and we're not even on the spinous process. So I'm pushing it back. Can we inflate these guys towards each other? Sort of. That's one way that you do it. Okay, just isolating them. And then, why don't we just use move? That's one way, or rotate with that tip. There we go. And then move. There. That's nice. Okay, pretty low res. Do I have Dynamesh on? Yes. Let's show the whole thing. Keep group on. Clear the mask and Dynamesh that. It's going to be too hard to work with that as it was. Very low res. Leave a little bit of the spine out there. In a female, I want a little bit of that bump. Okay, where is this going? Mastoid process. Take it down a little bit. It's just a little bit above that nuchal line. Let's say it's not a little bit really. I mean, it's until 3 or 4. So it's got some good distance. And yep, just connecting. And pretty much a straight line. Yes. Alright, so I'm trying to just get these straight lines in effect. And then from a front or a side view, we want to make sure that, you know, we've got this curve in. Make sure it's coming in and connecting all the way to the front of that mastoid process. Okay, and then it's going to move down and back. So we've got a little bit of movement to adjust for here. And into snake hook for this one. Move elastic might work as well. Okay. Smooth that out a touch. Smooth's better than Z-Sketch, huh? Z-Sketch was quite a pain to get that to smooth in any way that was positive. Okay, I'm giving it a little bit of volume, and let's take a look at its friends and neighbors and try to figure out how these guys are going to connect. So key number one that you need to be aware of is the schematic view from the side, and you'll see this in if you just Google anatomy of the neck, you'll get something that'll give you the schematic view I'm about to give you right now. It's relatively straightforward. Let me just get my draw size out of the way. Okay, so of course the first overarching thing that you're going to see is going to be the trapezius. That's going to take over a lot of the form. And so it's going to come down connect to the clavicle from the front. It's also taking up a lot of this from the back. So there we go. Now from the front, you see the sternocletomastoid, which is, of course, going from the mastoid process down to the sternum. Something like that. And that leaves the space in between. So what is the space in between? Let's do this in red. Okay, we've already kind of started to separate them. So the little shape right here, this is going to be the Splenius Capitis. Okay, I got that right. That part is right. It is in the middle. Let's just outline that. Then above that, let's do this in green so it's really obvious. What's that going to be? The semi-spinalis capitis. Alright, then what's going to be the section below that? We'll do it again in green. What's going to be the muscle that happens down there? That's going to take up a little bit of this room. That's going to be the levitator scapulae. Alright, so you got to keep those guys in your mind, and then from there it drops and changes a little bit. You want to keep these guys in your mind as the primary forms, but then below that, of course, we're going to get into the Scalenus Medius. Okay, and that's going to be part of this shape down here. Alright, so that's going to be one of the next muscles that we look at. Okay, now if you go a little bit further, you'll see the omohyoid down there. That's where it should be anyways. The omohyoid, and then of course we're going to get that next portion from the sternocletomastoid, the part that attaches to the clavicle, is going to be a little bit below that. So you want to make a note of these guys. So this is going to be the semi-spinalis capitis. Okay, this one right below it is going to be what we're working on right now, the Splenius Capitis. Below that, that's going to be the levitator scapulae. Alright, now below that, okay, Scalenus Medius. Scalenus Medius. Okay, omohyoid. And then, of course, the sternocletomastoid. All right there. So just make sure you're aware of all of those guys. Make sure you know what they're doing and you know what part they have. You can remember the guys from the front here. The digastric coming in this side. We've got the myeloid hyoid, okay, the sternohyoid, and then of course the omohyoid. So you got all that stuff kind of written out in there. Pause the video, make sure you write these guys down, they're important. But let's go in now and make sure that we've got the form wrapping around it in the right way. Because the Splenius Capitis is really largely going to wrap around. It's going to be superior, it's going to be on the outside of the semi-spinalis capitis. It's going to be outside of that, and even in some cases above the levitator scapulae. So let's just be clear about where that is. Alright, now we have, of course, that insertion along that mastoid process. Let's drop it down a little bit. I don't want it to be that dominant along the front. Alright, time for our next little muscle. So the Scalenus Medius. Okay, we want to take a look at this guy now and see if we can understand where its insertions and origins are. So origins and insertions. The origins are going to be along the 2nd all the way to the 7th transverse process. The insertion is going to be along that 1st rib. Okay, so that's where it's going to be inserting. So we've got this form kind of reaching from here out. Let's do that in red. And you can see it's quite naturally going to fit into that schematic view that we had before. And it's going to just kind of flow right next to the levitator scapulae. So remember, the origin is along 2 through 7 cervical vertebrae, the transverse process of them. And then the insertion is along that rib, 1st rib, outer border of it. Basically is, you know, let's say if this is the farthest point, it's the farthest point and the back half of that. So that's going to be a simple thing to do. I wonder if we can just do it with the levitator scapulae. Uh-oh. I don't know if you're noticing, but it kind of looks like the levitator scapulae. Only it's got a little bit of a different position. A different insertion, I should say. So why don't we do this? I love doing these things. So we're going to duplicate it, rename it, and we're going to call it the Scalenus Medius. And let's see. We've got to get rid of one piece. Because remember, it doesn't go all the way to the top. We still have our poly groups. Let's hide the levitator scapulae. That got me confused. So I'm just going in there. And do I want to delete it? Well, not really. Because this has 4 points, and the origin of this guy is a little bit bigger. So you know what? Scratch that, because I want to make sure I know what this form is. So in this case, we're just going to go to the semi-spinalis capitis. I'm going to duplicate this guy, and let's just start over from scratch. Scalenus Medius. Okay. And now let's go into Dynamesh. Make sure group is on, because we're going to get rid of that copy of the semi-spinalis capitis. We're going to go select the curve tube like this, and let's just start drawing our curves and our form. So we're going to go from 7 here. Make sure that your settings are right. So stroke, size is off, as line is important. Draw size is too small, like that. That's actually perfect. Okay, could move that point a little bit. Okay, move that point a little bit as well. It's not sampling the right point, but thankfully with that use as line, man, that's super easy to adjust. Oops. Make sure you grab that end point. And now the last one, number 2. There you go. Alright, so we can turn, well, we can't turn it. Let's get rid of that temporarily. Clear that. We've got separate groups for everything. I'm going to Control Shift, click and drag, and go to Geometry and press Delete Hidden. So now the only thing that should be left is basically these muscles that I've just drawn. So now I'm going to go into Stroke and delete Curve, so it's out of my hair. Let's turn Polyframe off. You've got Inflate, and let's give this a little bit of volume. You know, I just want a little bit of volume at the edge. Make sure that mask by polygroup is off, in case you accidentally left it on from before. Keep the edges small, the places where it connects to the transverse process. And remember, our transverse process, at least mine, could be pushed out a good distance. Age polish. Really flatten the edge there. Okay, and I really like having them separate like that. Just adds a nice quality to it. So let's make them play nicely with everything else. Mostly I want to get it working with the levitator scapulae. And one of the first questions you're going to have is, you know, who's on top here in terms of the transverse process? And what you need to keep in mind is if you're looking at this purely from a side view, right now I've muddied this up, but let's say the transverse process, let's do it in green. The transverse process has a thickness like that. Let's just make it nice and ugly pretty, right? So the Scalenus Medius is going to be on the forward side of that. Okay, and then the levitator scapulae is going to be in the back side of that. So to say this anatomically, the Scalenus Medius is going to be in the anterior side of this, so it's going to be towards the front. And then the levitator scapulae is going to be in the posterior side of things. So posterior, anterior. Don't like to use that language much, but when you do learn it, it does make a difference in your understanding of anatomy. It just does. You can't get around it. So that done and set. Move brush. Let's just move it on to the other side. Just as easy as that. Levitator scapulae. Move it on back. Careful how large your draw size is, because you do not want to be affecting some of that contour. Some of that contour you want to stay exactly where it is. Okay, there you go. Scalenus. And let's get them talking. Don't want extra space in there, right? Okay, Splenius Capitis. Let's make that sit a little bit above it. Okay, and semispinalis. Let's look at the semispinalis and make sure that that's fitting okay. It is. And there you go. Alright, so the next little part in our adventure, and there's our throat as well. Now, next piece is going to be the sternocletomastoid. Alright, time for the finale, right? The big muscle. We're just going to duplicate this semispinalis capitis, and I'm going to get rid of everything else. Well, almost everything else. What else is visible? The throat. Curved tube, pretty straightforward. Make sure group is on though. There you go. That's really the basics. Let's lower the draw size. Now in a female, obviously smaller, right? And down here, you're going to have to decide how you want to handle that. Do you want to use the stroke? Something like that? I don't think so. I'm just going to leave them like they are, and I'll sculpt them into shape. But I do like the idea of using the curve, deleting it. I'm going to come in and create that clavicular portion. And since we're using this as line, I have this separate piece. I'm going to push it towards the inside. And I'm going to bury it. But there you go. Simple schematic setup. Clear the mask, keep group on, and why don't we hide that back piece, go to geometry and click delete hidden. Again, delete hidden. Okay, so that's gone. Now symmetry is on. I'm going to press shift, smooth this out. Notice it's not as easy as we might have thought. There's a lot of resolution there. You can lower it, like you can drop out of Dynamesh. Let's drop out of Dynamesh, lower it outside of Dynamesh, and then go back in. Gets a little bit tricky. Let's just leave it for right now. I don't want to fix that. So I'm just going to use inflate, press Alt, okay, and now along the side here. I'm just going to inflate the sides of this. That's going to help me spread this out. And yes, it's starting to look super ugly in terms of its polygons. That's fine. H polish, start to establish a front plane. Push that front plane. Okay, H polish from the back. Okay, Control, Shift, click and drag. Remeshes that as a brand new part. Really cool. I love that about this entire process. It's just fantastic. So the portion that we have here, we can do a lot of things with it, and you know, there's a lot of different representations for how this scapula portion would work. But let's use just the traditional one that we've got over with the Elliott Goldfingers, and I'm going to mask it. So I'm going to go into rotate, Control, click and drag towards the part I want to mask. Go back to draw, and there we go. Pull that up. And there. Okay, might want to twist that around a little bit. We got to find some way to make it really integrate. So one of the things you can do is go into rotate, Control Shift, click and drag. Okay, if it does that, try turning on local symmetry. If it freaks out, just turn local symmetry on, and that can really sort out a lot of those issues. Okay, let's push that a little bit behind. Smooth everything out. Just going to smooth this edge while inflating this. And back with inflate, Alt, kind of take this down a notch. Let's do some shaping. So with perspective on, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of how much of that mastoid shows, but we have a female here, so no matter what, the mastoid, I should say how much of the sternocletomastoid shows, you want to kind of taper this in. we don't want this to be, you know, we don't want that sternocletomastoid to be a super strong muscle there. Solo mode, H. I'm going to start to trim the inside, trim the outside, trim the front, start to get a little bit of a box set up. Okay, front, I got all my sides, so that's good. That makes it a little easier for me to come in and just start to pull this in. Yeah. This guy here, just want to pull this more along the sides here. There we go. There. That's a bit better. Okay, clear the mask. Now, in order to really see this and judge this, we got to see everything else. So this is a new phase. This could be another video, but this is going to be the final part of the neck. We're going to start to make sure, we're going to look at everything as a whole, I guess you should say. So wherever I'm at, I'm going to just show everything, all the muscles. Now we've got some prettying up to do with these, but I'll let you manage that. I just want to look at these and see exactly what I'm seeing right now. What's happening with that trapezius? Is the trapezius intersecting all of these guys? Well, sure looks like it is. So I'm going to press N for the subtool pop-up, T for trapezius, because I know I named it, and find that guy right there. Transparency. And you can see the two different modalities of what I was working with here. Okay, in the neck muscles, I was focused on neck muscles. I was focused on their linearity, non-linearity. So basically, I ended up making a neck which was pretty straight up and down, and that would be pretty much its entire volume. And that's fine and dandy, but I mean, now that you see that, don't you think that's a little masculine? That neck is very masculine. So do I want it to be that way? It's a female we're working with in this case. We have yet to turn this into a male, but in this case it's a female, so my thought is that the trapezius is probably more right the way it is. I need a little bit less muscle. And that's a couple of different things. That's a couple of different muscles. It's really actually all of them, because really the nuchal ligament, the nuchal ligament wasn't right for me. I went straight up from C7. So right there I went straight up, but the nuchal ligament is going to be curved a little bit more for her. We're going to curve it more. And so we could use transpose master to adjust these, but my thought is one at a time with a move brush. It's probably going to do us what we need, as long as we're doing it with clarity. So I'm going to go in with this guy and the move brush. This is going to be the first one. Well, wait, the splenius. I don't want that one. Actually, we do. We want the splenius to be first. Let's turn these other guys off. Okay, just getting this roughly in place. Alright, and now I am going to make an adjustment to the trapezius. Right there at the border. I want it to play a little better with the Splenius Capitis. I'm going to just pull that edge in a little bit, have it disappear. I feel a little unsure about it, but let's turn transparency off. NT trapezius. Oops. And let's just give it a little bit more volume. I do think it's too far back, or too far in. Doesn't really account for that nuchal ligament. Just a tiny bit, not a whole lot. Okay. N.S. Splenius Capitis. And alright, now I did the Splenius Capitis first because that was the one that connected with the trapezius. So now I can go through and start to work my way backwards. And let's get a little bit, I'm not done yet. I want to get a little bit of movement inwards. There we go. I need a little bit of form in there. I need shape for the semi-spinalis capitis. So I'm just going to adjust that line for the trapezius so that I can get it. And really push these guys until they're real close. There we go. That's enough. Alright, now let's come down. And let's look at the... That's not the semi. Here we go. And yeah, looks like we're pretty connected in there. So if there's any problem, it's going to be as it relates to the Splenius Capitis, which is fine. I'm going to go in and adjust that. But right now, let's take the levitator scapulae and see if we can't push this a little bit forward. Because I don't really want to give her too much in the way of a neck muscle. But the trapezius could be pushed further out. So right here we could give that a little hit. Oops. NS, no, it's NL. Okay, and then with the trapezius, I can kind of push this line a little bit just to show more of it. Show more of the levitator scapulae. So really what I'm doing right now is just thinning out the trapezius in the neck portion, which makes me kind of want to thin this portion out along the shoulder portion, the transversal portion as they call it. Alright, levitator scapulae. Alright, we're showing a little bit more of that, so I'm okay. I'm going to move on to the Scalenus Medius. Okay, and let's make that a little bit subservient. We'll make it subservient down towards the bottom. Towards the top, it's a little less so. And then let's put that sternocleto in. Okay, remember I'm thinking about the diagram right now. So I'm not thinking about the insertion and origin right now and how they're going to fall apart. I'm actually thinking about the aesthetics, the diagram. Splenius Capitis, levitator scapulae, okay, Scalenus Medius, omohyoid, semi-spinalis capitis. So I'm thinking about those groupings right now, trying to make sure that I got it. And one of the key things is that that levitator scapulae has a good bit of form there. And I'm not getting that form right now. So let me leave Scalenus Medius visible while I come in and adjust the levitator scapulae. And then also Splenius Capitis. Yeah. Okay. Scalenus. Alright, we're going to have to work on that omohyoid, which is actually part of the throat. So inflate that a little bit, get a little bit more volume out of that guy. And I'm going to use move, and I just want to make sure that schematically speaking it's following a certain pattern. Okay, there we go. Alright, now Scalenus, move that out so it's on the outer side of that rib. Take up a little bit more of that internal volume in there. Semi-spinalis capitis. Let's select that and just dig it in a little bit. Right there. And there. Digging that in, making sure it's inferior. Okay, let's rename this finally because I keep making the mistake. Sternocletomastoid. Omohyoid. Oops. Dig it in there a little bit. Make sure it's inferior, subservient in there. Sternocletomastoid. Smooth this out. Okay. And now from a side view, sternocletomastoid. Let's just make it fit. Okay, and then come back into the trapezius. And the last trick is going to be to make the trapezius lay on top of them, nice and clean, and then come down to fill up some of this negative space. So not a hard trick, you just got to pull it down. Make sure that that sternocletomastoid is also being pulled in. Okay, and it's affecting the omohyoid. There we go. Alright, and so now with a little bit more sculpting, a little bit more time and energy, all of these guys are ready to fit together. But at this point, we have finished the neck muscles that are going to be relevant to us, that we're going to really want to be paying attention to. So I hope you enjoyed, and hope you look forward to the next module.